Welcome to The World Today. I'm Vikas Majid Khan. Today, I hope we have a fascinating show for you because the Ministry of Science and Technology is conducting a workshop in NUST on the 10th of April, which is on robotics and artificial intelligence. So it's a very interesting field. Let's introduce our guests in the studio who are going to be talking about it since they're the experts. So I'd like to start with Dr. Yasser Ayaz. He's with NUST and the head of the Department of Mechatronics. Along with him, we have Dr. Abdul Rahman. He's the director of ComSats at the Attic campus. And along with him, we have Mr. Iftikhar Mahmood. He's with the Center for Advanced Studies and Engineering, also known as CASE. Well, thank you very much, gentlemen, for being in the studios today. Yasser, I'd like to start with you. What exactly is the goal of the Ministry of Science and Technology in trying to conduct this workshop? What are we trying to achieve here?
The workshop, the detailed title of the workshop is Workshop on Robotics Technology Applications for Industrial Development in Pakistan. So you see, like all over the world, when you see the industry, gradually precision manufacturing is leading to all sorts of manufacturing industries adopting robotics in their manufacturing lines. Because repetitive tasks are done much better through automation as compared to what can be done by a human being. Secondly, for quality assurance and for real-time adaptation of good manufacturing of materials and goods, the fourth revolution of industry incorporates artificial intelligence into robotics, and finally it will be known as cyber-physical systems when it comes into reality. So Pakistan is not as far ahead in this segment of the industry as the developing world. For example, manufacturing in Japan for automotives, you get into an automation line and you don't even see a human in the whole manufacturing line. So the government of Pakistan has classified robotics as one of the most important 6 areas of technology in Vision 2025. So in line with that, in order to improve our manufacturing quality of Pakistani goods and to improve its exportability into the market everywhere, outside Pakistan as well, and to give good products of our own here in Pakistan to become self-sufficient, it's a very important workshop. It will be a milestone, I think, in the history of Pakistan.
Well, there are lots of aspects connected to this development, and one of those is jobs in industries, factories. So once, there's a fear that once robots come into the picture, human beings would become redundant and obsolete, and therefore, that would be a big challenge for the government because employment is a big issue in our country. So, Dr. Saab, in your opinion, how will we deal with that issue? We also have the aspect of, industrial accidents that may be prevented as a result of robotics, but that's besides the point.
That's a common fear, actually. All over the world, people will start thinking that the robots will take over their jobs. But all the industrialized countries have realized that by using robots, by creating more increasing the productivity and the quality, actually you gain in bigger workspace. More and more opportunities are concerned. And then wherever the robots are introduced, the productivity actually increases and the profits are increased in a way that introduces the increased capacity of that industry. So more and more opportunities are concerned. And those opportunities actually imply more labor. And it has never been so. All the labor, which is very menial and simple, are taken over the robots, but the intelligent job will continue to be used by the labor. And all the intelligent people, qualified people will continue to do that job.
Well, that raises another question, and I'll take that to Mr. Iftikhar. Since Dr. Saab has mentioned that we need qualified people, in our country, education is a huge issue. It has one of the least amounts of budget that's allocated towards education. So how are we going to be competing with developing countries if we don't have educated people to take over those robots or to control those industries?
Absolutely. That is the first thing that is a prerequisite to have manpower. And the manpower which is trained in these particular area. And that is why the HEC and the ICT R&D fund, they have included robotics in those areas where they are spending money in terms of developing human resource. They are encouraging students to go abroad and take on robotics programs for their masters and PhDs and do specializations. And coming back here in Pakistan, we did a study 6 months back under the auspices of Ministry of Science and Technology, where we did a survey of all of our universities in Pakistan to find out whichever academic programs are interested in robotics. Surprisingly, about 19 to 20 universities in Pakistan engineering universities have some level of research going on in robotics, which is very encouraging. And because of that, the idea came along that we should now put together this research group with the industry to see what level of industry's problems can be handled by these academics. Those who are doing research in a confined academic environment or educational environment, they should become more practically oriented and solve actual real world problems for our industry that they are facing. And the first thing, like where there are hazardous jobs involved for the people, or where there's too much repetition involved, those kinds of things can be handed over to robots to make things better, and at the same time gain in terms of the efficiency of the industry itself, improving the quality of the product. The fear that you just talked about, that jobs would be lost, is a pervasive fear all over the world. And it happens when new technologies arrive, and it's the same way happening with robotics also. But then there's this very famous professor from the US who's been from Harvard and, of course, Berkeley, Professor Keiko. And he just talked about it about 2 weeks back. And he said that it's a fear, typical fear, which is not really rooted in reality. Any job that requires human intelligence is not going to go away. It's going to stay here forever. Particularly anything where we are creatively utilizing our brain. The arts, the creative arts, the writing, the drama producing, the movie making, all that kind of stuff, the doing science. A robot will never be able to do science.
Right,
Robot will never be able to do art.
There's also the other aspect of the evolution of human development,
Exactly.
where once you start relegating such repetitive tasks to robots,
Exactly.
you have time more to spend on your
True.
own
We need to raise the level
intellectual
of
growth, I would say.
We
That-
raise
that-
the
that
level
could
of
be a
our
positive thing.
human resource. We
Well-
train them well so that they can take on more intellectual jobs rather than menial jobs.
Absolutely.
So the idea is raising the level. We talk about knowledge economy, so knowledge economy, this is what it means.
Okay, that's a
That
good
we
point.
use knowledge. Yeah.
Dr. Yasser, you also mentioned the application of this study that you're involved in CPEC and Pakistan's Vision 2025. Can you elaborate further on that?
Yeah, indeed. So, CPEC, of course, is one of the most important economic projects, not just for Pakistan, but for the entire world, actually. Because China is, we know that it's one of the manufacturing leaders in the world. And I've been to China many times in many of their conferences, and their visions are vast. It is like Pakistan's, very good luck that we are, attached with them in this sort of a project. We need robotic support in many projects connected with CPEC. Like manufacturing is one thing. For example, if we don't do precision manufacturing in Pakistan using robots, probably we won't have any manufacturing tasks being done in Pakistan at all. Because when other countries are manufacturing goods which are better in quality, which can be done with robots, which can't be done by humans, why would countries buy our products when they're not as high in quality as compared to what is being sold in other places? So if we want to stay in the game at all, we need robotics to come in. So first of all, if we want CPEC to give us any sort of benefit in the manufacturing sector, we need robotics. That's one. Number two, CPEC is about logistics. That you want to take, for example, the products from Gwadar and all the way over to China, passing many places from Pakistan. Number one, you need efficient transportation. You need surveillance, intelligence surveillance, and you need tracking of the goods, etc., etc. You need handling, a robot. One of the things which robots are known very well for is the handling of the goods in a safe and efficient manner, from, for example, docks to unloading and taking them from various places, putting them onto the containers, sending them over, and stuff like that. These days, for example, self-driving cars are now legalized in 2 of the states, California and Nevada, have now legalized self-driving cars on the road. So, for example, for CPEC, why shouldn't we have self-driving cars in the times to come, where the cars would be able to travel 24 hours around the clock, and the drivers would not have to stop and take some rest? That would increase the efficiency, in many manners. Then there is seaport security, for which you need robots, underwater robots, and robots patrolling our seas, where they could, they could be aerial robots, they could be robots swimming in the water that could actually look after different tasks, related to CPEC. So robotics is actually the center of all sorts of technology. In fact, for example, a robot by definition is anything that mimics the structure or the function of a human or an animal. So intelligence, for example, is also one of that aspects, right? So AI is estimated to become a part of around 68% of the world's total products in the years to come. So unless we excel in this line, including CPEC, in general, in the industry and in science in general, we won't have any survival at all. This is why it's important. This is like, if we want to survive in the world, if we want to manufacture good products, then the industry, the academia, the government, everybody has to realize it. And it's like very good to see that that realization has already been made. Like classification of robotics among the top 6 priority technological areas in Pakistan by the government of Pakistan in Vision 2025 is an indicator that they have realized this, and robotics is now there, right? And they are putting investment, they are bringing the industry up, and now it's also up to the industry that they have qualified persons. For example, one of my researches that I did in Pakistan some time back in 2013, we published a paper which was upgraded into a PhD thesis, a full PhD thesis by MIT of USA, which is the best university of the world for many, many past years. And this is breaking all sorts of notions that we don't have, able researchers in Pakistan. And there are rarely...
Well, most of our able researchers are working for the US anyway. Moving on, Dr. Saab, what can the academia do in order to bridge the gap between industry and academia? Because that's the objective over here. So what are the steps and measures that need to be taken?
Actually, the whole objective of this particular workshop is to introduce the industry with the potential of our academia. We have a lot of academic conferences all over the year in Pakistan. There all the researchers come and display their current research area. But this workshop is all about introducing the potential solution providers to the industry and introduce to the industry what are the potential that they can incorporate in their industry to improve the quality. So the whole objective is about 5 or 6 researchers from academia, rest from the industry leaders. They will come and discuss there will be a formal handshake and introduction, and then we'll put up some formal focus groups which will continue to further their interaction and provide solutions. Then these solution providers and those who have those problems will interact at their own, and ministry might as well actually follow it up, so that this does not just finishes over one day.
Right.
And this will become a formal interaction point where we can actually monitor it or formulate certain policies for the ministry to follow it up.
Well, that's one aspect of it, of conducting such workshops, which is indeed a great initiative. But speaking about the long-term benefits or practical application of this idea, Mr. Iftikhar, if you could please answer the question. How can we ensure that various industrialists would think of this, of approaching various academics who are doing the research in robotics to apply that research in their respective industries? For example, you did mention about the football industry in Sialkot, but there are so many others. For example, textiles, that is one of our major exports. Then there's leather, there's a whole gamut of industries there. But what would make them want to opt for robotics rather than keep those very cheap labor that's available in Pakistan?
Absolutely. The first important thing is the interaction. We need to increase the interaction among the industry and the academia. That interaction usually does not exist. Universities have been evolving in a separate bubble, and industry is in a separate bubble. There is a lack of trust. Industry does not trust the academicians. They say these are bookish people. They solve problems, bookish problems, which have something to do with the real world. And on the other side, in academia, we are doing science, we are doing research. Nothing to do with industry in terms of bringing out a product. But
that's not entirely true, though.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of, in fact, most of the research that's done is then practically applied to military causes, I would say, or military development, military industry.
True, but the reason is because military tends to fund. Our industry does not tend to fund R&D. By the academics or
that's
the universities.
a very interesting point that you've raised, sir, and that's where we need the support and help of
the issue is of confidence. So the industry has to build that confidence in the academia that yes, these guys can deliver. They can give us solutions. Because once we talk of robotics, there is revulsion in the industry. They say it is extremely expensive. A robot is really expensive to import. Hundreds of thousands are supposed to be spent in dollars and say one robot, which is artificial intelligence, to do a certain process in a particular factory. So the factory owner says, why shouldn't I employ people which are much cheaper for me? Human labor is much cheaper. I bring in a robot, which is expensive, and then I have to go for a maintenance contract, which is even more expensive by that foreign manufacturer of the robot. That is where we need to come in. The academia has to give them a solution which is local, which is far cheaper, developed in Pak rupees, given to them in Pak rupees. And academia has to develop the concept of providing a life cycle support to something that they build as a solution.
Right.
So that is where startups come in. So the universities are being pushed into developing a culture where they tell their engineering students to start up companies, come up with solutions to problems, convert them into products, bring them as products into the market, and bring in investors. Universities have developed incubation centers. There are offices of research, innovation, and commercialization known as ORICs, which are now required by all technical universities to have by the HEC. The purpose is to make the research that they do practically oriented, solving problems on the ground for our industry according to our own milieu, our own factors of social factors,
Our environment.
other factors, our environment, our need, which would not be expensive and which would be doing a better job at solving the issue. Because whatever you buy from outside, ultimately you tend to modify them. Those solutions are not exactly solving our problems. We need to modify them, and at times it becomes more expensive to do that.
Right.
So developing stuff right here,
Indigenously.
according to our own needs, according to our own specifications, is the way to go.
Right.
This confidence has to come from both ways.
So
Industries,
how can we develop that? I'll take this question to Yasser. Yasser, how can we develop confidence between the industry and the academia so that they can work together to achieve the desired goal?
It's already happening, actually.
Okay.
Let me give you a couple of examples. For example, at NUST, we took up a project with the sports industry located in Sialkot. And what we did is that, most of our sports industry, when they manufacture footballs, they have, they measure the quality of the football by putting measuring tapes around the ball and trying to measure its circumference, which is like really, really crude. And when the balls finally go abroad, many of them do not meet the mark of the manufacturers.
criteria.
Yeah, exactly. The criteria which is required by the manufacturers abroad, or the companies like
So they're
famous
rejected.
companies, they get rejected. So we developed a vision-based artificial intelligence, inclusive
A machine.
robotics, a robotic machine which you put the ball in and it measures it from all aspects. It takes its pictures from different angles and then analyzes whether this ball is good enough to be to meet the standards or not. If it's not, it's just discarded. With time, of course, we'll develop more machines which can actually lead to good production of good footballs as well. But first of all, we need to know how good we really are. How many balls are we producing, bad or good? So that step has already been done. That machine has been made and deployed. It was developed in Pakistan. It was developed at NUST, at my own university, in my own department of robotics and artificial intelligence in the H12 campus in Islamabad.
That's fantastic.
Let me give you another example. For example, in this workshop, for example, we are going to have a whole display of people who have already, they are already in the process of commercializing their products. There is going to be a whole startups display, startup companies who have developed an idea, who have developed it into a product, and now they are already into the market. They're selling it to the people. I'll give you a couple of examples of that. For example, there's a startup called Anzen. Anzen is about security, for instance. Security is a big problem for Pakistan these days. So one of the solutions they've come up with is that you take, cameras, you put them outside homes, you can put them outside your businesses, you can even put them in streets, and they, watch people coming and going. And whenever they see an unfamiliar face, for example, coming in front of your house, some thief or some robber potentially, or anybody who does not belong there, it can give you an alert on your mobile phone. So that's a 24-hour watchman which works in the day, which works in the night using infrared. It even detects movement when you're sleeping if somebody comes and he's covered his face. So this is one. Another example, for example, another startup, it is developing artificial limbs and exoskeletons to support disabled people. It's called Sahara IO. It's also going to be displaying its products there.
Fantastic.
There are two more, for example, I can give you, which are targeting robotics education. Robotics education is a big industry. Like MIT developed these products called Lego Mindstorms, which is now, it has stormed all over the world. And even in Pakistan, there are many people who are using that. So there is a particular startup called RoboMiners located here in Islamabad, and they have developed some new kinds of teaching methodologies which are based on science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, STEM. So, and based on that, they are introducing new techniques of teaching to inspire creativity into the students, and they are very successful. So, they are going to be on display. There's another company called Advon that has its own, it's a Karachi-based startup, which has its own, robotic kits, which people can use, for different kind of robotic experiments for robotic teaching. Previously, all these robots have been imported from abroad, and they cost us in millions. And these robots are very, very cheap, and they're pretty good to experiment with. So, there are several examples of this type. There are, for example, helmets which have artificial intelligence functions, and they can communicate with you when you're turning right or turning left, or when there is a danger on the road. Even with the cars behind you, they can give a signal. For example, the indicators are mounted onto the helmet itself. So this is called Heli. There's a company called Let's Innovate that's manufacturing it. So these are small companies made by students which are yet breaking into the market, and they'll be displaying their products outside there in the startup. For industries, for example, around the world, I've just been to Barcelona, for example, attending one of the world's biggest startup competitions. So industry is swarming startups over there, and they are willing to invest because that's the future of the digital manufacturing world.
Absolutely.
They just come and they just see what sort of products people are making. If they see potential in a product, they can put their money into one of them. They can join hands into one of the products which people are making, and they can start, making this thing into a whole product of their own. There are going to be other displays which are not startups. They are projects done by university students, but they're not yet commercialized, right? So but they don't have a commercialization model, but they have done good scientific projects which are relevant for the industry.
Right.
For example, there is in my university, a project was done, it's going to be on display, which is for people who are blind. If they want to, move around in the environment, can there be a solution for that? So we have worked with a company called Sakura Wheelchairs in Japan, and there are several organizations in Pakistan like Milestone. It's an organization for the disabled people, run by the disabled people themselves, Lahore-based organization. So what we've done is that we've taken a wheelchair, an automated, like a steerable wheelchair, and we put a laser rangefinder and a camera on top of it. What it does is that it looks at the environment, it gathers information about whatever obstacles are around it, and finds the path for the blind person on its own. All the person has to do is, to tell the wheelchair that take me to the kitchen, for example. And in the final form, the wheelchair will be able to drive that person to the kitchen. Of course, we're not there yet, but what we can do so far, we do gather the environment data, we do make the maps, and for example, if the person is disabled, but for example, he can move his eyeball function, or he's even able to just give a command using his brain. So we have an interface which we put on the head of the person, with which he can give commands like start, stop, go right, go left, without physically operating anything.
Hopefully you wouldn't say, take me to the kitchen fast. That might be a problem.
Yeah.
Dr. Abdul Rahman, please tell us that what kind of an interest do you see in the students of our generation in this particular field of robotics, since you are from ComStats and you must be interacting with students all the time? Is there a lot of zeal and a lot of desire for students to get into this field, and do they see the future, the importance of it for the future of mankind's development?
Well, I would say that it's not an optional. It's more or less our necessity for future. So like robotics deals with mechanical engineering, computer engineering, electrical, and the cutting edge of it. It's not rudimentary knowledge of that, it's a cutting edge. And now that we see nanotechnologies and artificial intelligence and computerization and batteries and everything is actually innovating. And like the young generation would like to learn more and more in technical edge. And the future is all about IT, ICT, and that's where they have the interest as well. All the leading institutes are actually teaching these courses, and more masters and graduate and PhD programs are being introduced. More and more faculty is being trained from abroad, and this is their interest area. Like everybody has said, our industry has no more this option that they continue to use that labor. If they have to compete in future, they have to introduce artificial intelligence and robotics. If they continue to use the manual labor, they will be left back, and the industry will eventually be closed. So that's what we want to introduce them.
Yes, sir, but all of this technology is really dependent on a sustainable source of energy. And that is also a big problem when it comes to Pakistan. We are not secure in terms of energy as yet, although we are working on it. But in the future, if there was to be an energy crisis or a blackout, then what would happen to a house that's completely run by artificial intelligence? Everything would just shut down, and how would a human being who's only used to that sort of an environment living there, how would he cope with it? So that is a question that I'd like to take to you.
Of course, all these intelligence systems, they deal with that kind of a scenario. It is built into the system. If the power goes away, they already usually have backups. I'm sorry. Those backups help the system to sustain certain functionality, basic functionality, at least inform the owner as to what has happened, known as concept of graceful degradation. They don't shut down completely. These systems have built-in capability, and depending on the seriousness of the task that a particular robot is doing or an artificial intelligence system is doing, these safeguards are built into it. That if the power goes away, how gracefully it will stop performing its function, and how long it can continue on the standby power that takes over automatically, like a generator or a UPS, whatever is available to it.
Right.
But power is definitely an important aspect which comes to mind, and in
Especially
Pakistan,
in our environment, sir.
Exactly.
Because we have major issues with power.
And I was looking at Germany's news a few days back that they are now building giant batteries to store the excessive energy from wind and solar that they are now making.
Yeah, let's not talk about the Germans though, because once the Americans asked them that what do you do in terms of a power breakdown, they said, what's that?
I can suggest to you a solution, for example. For example, there's a certain thing in artificial intelligence which is known as machine learning.
Okay.
So in machine learning, it's like, you can do a probabilistic analysis of what sort of failures you have encountered, based on what sorts of failures you've encountered in the past. You can actually predict what sorts of failures you may have in the coming years and in what sort of areas, based upon, the previous data. You don't need to have a deterministic. Deterministic means that, a model which can be comprehended by a human and, put into mathematics. So machine can be given data about, this kind of problems have been encountered in the past, and an algorithm can sit there and, you just like a human learns, it learns things on its own, and it gives you predictions that this kind of problem will happen at this place at this time. This can also be weather problems. It can also be about earthquakes, and some of them have been very true in the past. For example, with Japanese tsunami, which took place, there were predictions. I've lived in Japan for doing my PhD. I did my PhD in Tohoku University. In fact, I was living in the same region which was hit by the earthquake.
In Fukushima?
Near that? In Sendai. There are three major areas which was hit. So Sendai was another area, Miyagi province, it is there. So I was living there. So we were already hearing talks that statistically it is said that there's going to be a big earthquake in this region because there is one in every 30 years. So that's based on machine learning that people come up with.
Right.
So this kind of problems can give you a lot of precise data which is based on probability, right? That roughly in around this many, for example, days or this many months, this kind of a problem can take place. So you can have some sort of a backup ready for there. Also, like a lot of your viewers might be wondering, because there's a display of the soccer playing robots with our talk right now.
Right.
So I should tell them what this is. These robots are also going to be on display at the workshop there, and this is Pakistan's robot football team. I am myself the coach of that football team as well. So like we have a team of 6 robots, which like is the first team ever in the history of the Robots World Cup football game, which has made it to the topmost league of this competition, which is actually played with humanoid robots. They have problems like the robots, they have to play on their own. They can't be controlled by humans from outside.
Right.
So these are exercises of artificial intelligence developed by advanced universities and the major countries, the advanced countries, to develop algorithms which will be later on put into the industry for practical stuff. So Pakistan actually is now the only country in South Asia which actually plays in the RoboCup top league. And the views that you're seeing right now with on the television with us, these are views of the RoboCup, and our own Pakistan team also featured in the matches. So we've been there for 3 years now, and the 4th year also we're going to try to qualify.
Fantastic.
Again.
I hope you guys win the World Cup finally.
Thank you. We'll try our best.
Moving on, Dr. Abdul Rahman, one of the practical applications of robotics we've seen all over the world and also in Pakistan is the military aspect, or the military applications, maybe using robots to defuse mines and so on and so forth. But isn't there a danger of that sort of turning into a robotic arms race all over the world, and then that may have consequences of its own further up the road?
Yes, it is. But let's see if there were no robots and humans were doing this job. That's why it was developed, because we cannot risk humans doing these kind of dangerous jobs. So the cost of a human life being lost is
Remember
much
what
more
happened
than
in Quetta?
Yeah.
Wouldn't it also create a completely different sort of an elite who have this knowledge and can then use it to their own benefit at the cost of a huge mass of the masses, so to speak,
But
of a large segment of the population, then because those who know how robots work and who control the robots will eventually end up controlling all the poor people who don't know anything about it.
Agreed. But let's talk in terms of nations. If we do not start and work indigenous projects for our defense, who would export those technologies to us? And where would we stand in due course of time if we have not mastered this
So we
science?
don't have a choice but
We
to
do not have a
actually
choice.
get into this.
We do not,
And the sooner the
so,
better.
and especially so in military, because the way robotics and artificial intelligence is taking over, it's about time that most of the dangerous, dirty, laborious jobs have to be done by the robots. And it's all over the world. Drones, UAVs, underwater, everything is being done by robotics. And like any sensitive technology, nobody would export you the cutting edge technology. We have to develop at our own. Until we start today, we will be left behind.
Absolutely. We'll be jeopardizing our own future if we do
Certainly.
not start this as of yesterday.
Indeed.
And I need to add one thing.
Please.
During this particular workshop is to identify the center of excellences as well. Like all the 1920 universities which was working in robotics, artificial intelligence, they're doing at their own certain projects which interest them or their research areas. We need to identify those clusters and target them, task them for a special, or identify the industry they should be working for. And maybe Government of Pakistan, Ministry of Science, HEC should fund them that this particular cluster should be working for, let's say, automobiles. This industry, this cluster should be working for, let's say, textile or car manufacturing. So we need to identify and fund them and identify those center of excellences so that not everybody should be working on everything.
Yeah, speaking of funding, Mr. Iftikhar, if you could tell us about the efforts that the government is actually making in terms of generating funds for additional research and development in this sector. How much have we done and how much more needs to be done?
In fact, funding for research has not been the priority area, frankly
Unfortunately.
speaking. But recently, things have started to change. Back in the beginning of this particular millennium, once we started to have telecoms, a fund was set up which was known as the ICT R&D Fund, where the whatever the proceeds that these telecoms had, 0.5% of that was diverted to a fund to help research. So that was a very good idea, and that fund grew with time. And after some time, people learned how to actually use that fund to promote research. In the beginning, people had no idea what to do with that. But now that fund has come on very well. There is a process now on where professors from universities can write proposals for a particular research, even in collaboration with industry, and get funding for their particular project. Similarly, HEC has recently set up the Technology Development Fund, which is a recent development, very recent development. And then there also we can, professors can write proposals with industry and get money for doing research. So it would be good that this stuff comes up, but I would like industry also to jump in and contribute for R&D. Our industry kind of shies away from this, and they tend to bring in stuff from abroad and just rely on it. So that is where I was emphasizing before too, that they should be able to have trust in the academia, that academia can deliver products. And they can do pilot projects to begin with, smaller projects, and gain confidence to do bigger projects with time. And Ministry of Science and Technology, through HEC and all, of course, our ICT Ministry, Information and Communication Technology Ministry, through ICT R&D Fund, they're doing this task very well. And there is this Pakistan Council on Science and Technology, PCST. Their function is to advise the government on policy matters in terms of science and technology and propose specific targeted interventions where our economy on its own isn't really doing much.
Sorry.
So they have come up with a vision for the next 10 years, and they have come up with backup funds for it so that that vision could actually be realized. And they have gone through a big exercise with all stakeholders, including the industry, the academia itself, and our defense sector, our commercial sector. Everybody got together to look at that. And the Prime Minister is expected to soon accept that document, sign that document into law. And then it would be a very good blueprint for future to progress. And robotics is in there as a prominent technology for funding by Ministry of Science and Technology, which I must appreciate by this current Ministry of Science and Technology, the Minister, the Secretary, and their staff, and Pakistan Council of Science and Technology.
Well, they're all taking this very seriously.
They're taking it seriously.
That's wonderful news as
And
well.
they're working with us, with the universities.
Excellent.
Like they got us together to do this workshop.
Fantastic.
So,
well, Dr. Yasser, one of the backbones of robotics and what we're talking about is artificial intelligence. So if you could talk little bit about, for the benefit of our audience, explain to them what is artificial intelligence, from your mobile phone or from your washing machine to a humanoid robot, with many different uses.
Right.
So
there was a very famous article which was written by Microsoft CEO Bill Gates in a magazine called Scientific American in the year 2007. And what he said is that, by the year 2025, at least in the developed world, there will be no home which is without any robot. In fact, his article was titled "A Robot in Every Home." So what he wrote inside that is that a lot of the robots that will be there in houses later on may not actually look like robots, as we perceive robots, with having two hands, and a face and
might
stuff.
be not humanoid, you mean?
Exactly. They might not be humanoids, but a lot of machines that start becoming intelligent. For example, your car, when you drive it, nobody says, "I'm driving a robot." But the moment that car has a self-driving functionality, it starts perceiving the environment on its own. It immediately is classified as a robot. Now, what does a self-driving car do aside from putting the driver, away and taking away his job, for example? What it does is gives you safer roads. Number one. Number two, it gives you efficient transportation, because cars which are self-driven will not violate laws. They will not, overspeed. They will not run over, pedestrians. They will not escape after accidents, and a lot of other things that are happening, they don't happen. And these things are a reality now. They're not in the future.
Right, in Dubai, they've started these air taxis, or they're testing these air taxis where you just dial a number and the taxi comes, and it's like a helicopter or a drone rather, in which you just sit and it takes you wherever you want to go and flies all over the traffic.
Exactly. And one of the points which is very important, if you link what I'm saying with what Mr. Iftikhar was saying just a few moments ago, is that ICT R&D Fund, for example, has 0.5% of the profits of the telecom industry only. That's one sector in Pakistan. So imagine the amount of funding that is yet left out, and that is not coming into the mainstream sector where products could be developed for Pakistan, and a lot of things could be applied. So that is one of the targets of the workshop. To get the industry there, they have the money, right? If 0.5% can be such a big amount which a lot of universities can apply to and get the funds and everything, imagine what could happen if they really become interested and they see the potential, because they buy products made by people like us, qualified from the same universities as us, who are just working outside Pakistan. So why not trust Pakistan? This is the question. When are we going to start doing that? Pakistan has been in existence for so many years, and we have done a lot.
That's $1 million question, exactly. I think I'll take that question to sure. Dr. Abdur Rahman. Sir, moving on. We've seen, as Yasser was saying, that a lack of trust between the academia and the industry. Mr. Iftikhar also spoke about that. But what are the steps that we can actually take to reduce that trust deficit?
I would say this dilemma of not trusting each other is not particular to Pakistan. It has happened to every industrialized country. Everywhere it happened so. Because these two mindsets are different. Academia wants to publish, industry needs a solution which is cheap and at times free of cost. But
preferably.
And it happened everywhere. It's not special to Pakistan. But this is how it developed. When you start to give them solutions, cheap, service backed up, and readily available, then they could start to trust you. We have to develop that trust. That, over the years, our academia itself has grown. Like last 5-10 years, we have become from 30 to 180 universities. I know that's a huge progress. Then so many PhDs have come back, and with latest knowledge, now they need to solve this problem. Industry is very fond of importing the solutions. They will buy a machinery from abroad. They will ask their servicemen to come and repair. They would not like to, hand it over to somebody who is from Pakistan. They would not trust it. But we have to develop. First thing, we have to identify the problem area, give them solution, give them a trusted solution and cheap solution. That's why they will start to trust us. And this is one such, I would say, initiative of Ministry of Science and Technology, that robotics area.
Okay, there's another, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but the question that comes to mind is that since Pakistan is largely an agrarian economy and agriculture is the backbone, then how do you see the practical application of robotics in agriculture, for example? We're almost out of time, so Mr. Iftikhar, if you could just very briefly answer the question.
In fact, agricultural robotics is a part of our robotics effort.
Fantastic.
Because agriculture requires a lot of tools.
Right.
Tremendous manual labor goes in, and many repetitive tasks are being done.
Right.
And productivity can be enhanced many folds in the fields out there if automation is brought into our process of agriculture. And in fact, the future plan for robotic development, the Excellence Center that is on the cards, would have agricultural robotics as the main area in it.
All right. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for taking out the time and being on the show. Well, you heard the conversation, and I hope it was as fascinating for you as it was for me. Overall, the idea is to bridge the gap between the academia and industry to find the solutions to improve the quality, efficiency, and productivity, and also to develop Pakistan's industrial sector. And on that note, it's goodbye.